if you own gold.
If you don't own gold, high gold prices are not good for you. And the same is true of stocks. It's not reflecting, the health of the economy. It's reflecting expectations of future profits. So if it looks like corporations will make more profit in the future, stock prices will go up. If profits are expected to go down, then the stock prices will go down. In this case, particularly the health insurance stocks went way up when news for the Joe Biden campaign, and that reflects the idea that there will continue to be a lot of profit made in the healthcare system, and the profits will not be taken out of the healthcare system. Now, if you think that it's good that your life or death is making a lot of money for a corporation, then that's good news. But I think that's a dubious way to look at it.
Well, I mean, but I'm wondering how we should all be processing news from the mainstream media, because it seems, I think that when you anoint uh, a candidate, appoint a candidate, the nominee, before we've had what 2/3 of the races, that's not healthy for the democracy. It's not healthy for the republic, is it?
The race is very close in terms of delegates, in terms of actual votes.
But
The
but Jim, that's not what you're hearing, right? You're not hearing that at all.
I think that the reaction of the stock market and the reaction of corporate media are related.
Mm.
In that, when you watch MSNBC, you're watching a cable channel that is owned by Comcast, the giant cable company. When you're watching CNN, you're watching a cable channel that is owned by AT&T, the phone company. And these are companies that have a huge interest in politics because they're both highly regulated industries. And so the attitude of government towards them uh, is very crucial to their bottom line. So it matters very much indeed to them who the president is. And if you have a president who is skeptical of corporate power, who's in favor, for example, of net neutrality to protect users of the internet, and prevent the companies that control the internet from profiting from them. That's bad news for these companies that have a big stake in internet profits. And so I think the reaction of particularly cable news to Biden's upsurge should be read in this way, that this is a corporate reaction to good news for corporations.
Mm. So, what should our takeaway be as we look at, as we are really moving into the middle of this primary season, as we're watching the Republicans cancel primaries? And you have someone, more than one, but you have one prominent ex-governor who's who's running against President Trump, but you don't hear about that. And now we're seeing uh, Vice President Biden had a couple of good nights, and it's as if no one else is running, and as if the race is not close.
Yeah, I think that people do need to keep in mind that in the end, the the power of politicians is based on votes, and so you do have the ability to affect what the the outcomes are by your by your votes and by your participation in campaigns. The that is something that media would like to, they have sort of a trust us model,
Mm.
where you watch you watch the news and you think and you're told that the only safe choice for November for going up against Donald Trump uh, is Joe Biden, and this is not based on polling. This is based on a sense that people who are in the political establishment have, that Bernie Sanders is not one of us, and therefore, who in the media establishment, which is very closely interconnected. The trick is to find ways of getting information that gets you out of the corporate media bubble. You're talking about healthcare and how healthcare is a critical issue to voters. And when you look at exit polls, you see that a lot of the people who voted for Joe Biden are people who think that it would be good to have a single public healthcare system that provides healthcare to everyone. That is not what Joe Biden is running on. That's not what he's offering. In fact, in the health stocks comes because he is not offering that. But you are if you are getting your news from corporate media, you're unlikely to know about that. You're very unlikely to know about the flaws in the healthcare system, except for your direct experience. But how those flaws connect to the political policies that are being offered by Joe Biden, by the candidates who represent the corporate establishment. And we at FAIR, we took a look at debate questions, and again and again, when the issue of healthcare comes up, the idea of that Medicare for all would cost too much. How can you pay for it? You're going to take away insurance from people. When really it's about giving people insurance. It's not about taking people's insurance away at all. And one thing that's very striking is that you don't see questions that are aimed at looking at the downside of staying with the current system. You don't see any questions that are aimed at the candidates who don't support Medicare for all, saying, what about the uninsured? What about people who have insurance but can't afford to go to the doctor because their insurance doesn't cover it? These are not questions that corporate media are interested in asking, because when you take a bird's eye view of what they're doing in these debates, they're trying to steer the conversation to a desired conclusion, which is that the candidates that they favor, the candidates that support corporate power, are the ones that you should vote for.
Jim Naureckas, everybody. Fairness and accuracy in reporting. I thank you so much for being with us today, because you're giving us a lot to think about. I think we do need to find out who owns the media outlet that we're watching, because it's now we don't have journalists anymore, Jim. We have media, and we have media companies, right?
Right. Yep.
Oh wow! Thank you so much for being with us. Can't wait to have you back. Oh, you're the best. You are the best. Thank you so much, everybody. If you're listening to us on Talk 1017 FM up in Milwaukee, give me a call at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. If you're listening to me on Talk 92.7 in Madison, 92.7 FM, call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. I heard from Carlos in Austria. I want to hear from you, and I want to hear from everybody else from all around the country. Calling us at 773-763-9278. You can also send us a text there. Thank you, GWC Injury Lawyers. And give us your information. Let us know what you're thinking. Let me go to you, Denise. Denise, you've got something on your mind today.
Good morning, Santita. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you.
So much going on that it's almost overwhelming. But I got to say this. Biden, out. Bloomberg, out. Klobuchar, out. And who else? The 3Bs, out. Okay? Warren, the issue of Elizabeth Warren, she should stay in. Period. And I also want to say about the CV-19. Oh, this is what I really want to say. We seem to forget, with Biden, the crime bill. One of the reasons why we have Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court is because of Joe Biden. Okay, let's not forget that.
Well, Denise, let me ask you this because I've been watching and I've been digging down in the numbers. It turns out that although blacks in the South favored Biden, blacks in the North don't feel the same way, and they say that he could get a very different reception as these primaries move north because he's dependent upon the black community to move forward. What do you say to that?
I say to I'm just saying Jim Clyburn, yes, and this thing that Biden has a lock on the black community when he's actually, to me, this is my opinion, he is still, since the age of 27, a Republican, okay? Disguised now as a Democrat, all right? He's not even a progressive, all right? And the North, he's going to get a different kind of flavor up here to me. That's my opinion.
Why is that? Very quickly before we go to break.
Okay, the reason why is that we have not swallowed, Northerners have not swallowed the Kool-Aid as Southerners have with the help of Jim Clyburn.
Mm.
That's all I got to say.
You said a whole lot. So everybody, what say you? Hey, sending you much love. In the next hour, we're going to be talking about the Molson Coors shooting. But I'm going to take the rest of your calls about election 2020. But the Molson Coors shooting, boy, oh boy, oh boy, you can push people too far. That's what it came by. That's what happened to me. That's what I started thinking. And we're going to talk with people from Milwaukee about what happened there just more than a week ago. It's heartbreaking, heartbreaking. Because, people's lives have been destroyed. They lost their loved ones. But lives were destroyed before the shooting. That's something for us to think about. Let me go to you, Maria. How you doing, Maria? How you feeling?
Oh, I'm feeling much better. It's taken some time, but the antibiotics, the rest, and the prednisone is helping me to breathe easier and stay upright.
Oh, that's important. But you take care of yourself, Maria.
Yes, yes, and the vitamin C is a great suggestion.
Told you.
Yeah. There's a few thoughts that I have. And I was saying, I remember when I was in college, my history course taught me that those that are oppressed, okay, evidently will rise up against the oppressor, okay? And the cycle just continues throughout, the years and centuries and so on. And history has shown us that humankind, there's always been one group that keeps the other group down. And I think we have not learned from our history. I think right now people are just tired of repeating that history. They want a candidate who is really about the people and about making their lives much better. The oppressors tend to keep those they're oppressing uneducated. They keep them homeless, poor, forcing them to work for virtually little wage and benefits. And of course, that's going to create a sense of, maybe for some folks, of despair, and for others, this will to fight against the establishment as they know it. And right now, we're at the fork of whether or not we will be able to change history so that it benefits not just the 1%ers, the very few, but everyone. And of course, we're not going to meet everybody's needs. We're not going to make everybody happy, but we can at least reach a middle ground. Now, folks, when they vote for those people that represent their ideals, their views, their conscience, and who they're comfortable with. Obviously, people aren't comfortable with Bernie, and the corporate media, they control the message. And you're correct. There are no journalists left.
But don't you think that I've got less than a minute here. I've got about 30 seconds. But don't you think we have the power to turn that around, Maria?
Oh, definitely. We the people. You know me, it's we the people. We have the power. And I think we just need to make a concerted effort, an organized effort, and a thoughtful effort, and a process where everybody comes together across the rainbow. We all have basic needs that can be met working together. So I truly believe the first three words of the Constitution, we the people, this country is based on the people. And we need to fight to keep that dream alive, to keep it moving. I'm one person, but let me tell you, I have a mouth.
Maria, we know. But we need your voice. Not only do you have a mouth, you have a voice. And that's why we're so glad to be here on WCPT every day and Talk 101.7 out of Milwaukee and Talk 92.7 out of Madison. Call us at 773-763-WCPT. Let's talk today on the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, it's Brock from Hero Power. If you care about the environment like me, you only want to support clean energy when you pay your electricity.
When the interview, because I wanted to get to the callers, I would just close the interview. I'll say, okay, thank you, I got that, let's go. Because that, gives you a chance to, okay, because you don't have to stretch it out, unless you need to. I mean, not even stretch it, unless, and let it be an organic process.
Mm-hmm. No, the 5:30 is good, and I just close with that music. And
oh, no, I'm just saying, no, that was great.
Yeah.
No, because that helps people.
No extra cost.
Helps everybody.
Your service doesn't change. You never pay more than the ComEd rate. Plus, WCPT
Oh my gosh,
listeners
this
can get a
coronavirus.
$25 credit off their first bill.
Okay,
Join today
got
at
that.
myheropower.com/WCPT. You're just 3 clicks away at myheropower.com/WCPT.
Moving and eating better every day can help make you and your kids healthier. Search We Can online to find out more. A message from the Ad Council, HHS, and NIH's We Can program.
Ground Game is the latest podcast from the Associated Press. Hosted by AP's Julie Pace.
Facebook is very interesting because they let your numbers go all the way up, then they bring them all the way back down so you can see where you could go. And this is designed for you to start paying them.
Several passengers on board a cruise ship that was
So whenever you see a big spike in my numbers, the next day you're going to see a big drop. And so until you pay them, you're not going to see them consistently. That's important to note.
After a previous passenger died from the illness. Former FEMA official Mark Nadeau says they're going to have to make some serious decisions about these passengers. What are we going to do?
Those who are actually exposed and not asymptomatic.
Oh, and I have something to share with you after the show.
Transport them.
I mean, good news, good news.
United Airlines cutting back international and domestic flights. In Italy, the European epicenter of the virus, schools are being closed nationwide.
Damn, this is a mess.
State are considering similar
A
measures.
mess.
Saudi Arabia
So is he going to be ready to get the callers up?
That's what I'm calling them right now.
Okay, yeah.
And Israeli Jews are asked not to kiss a mezuzah when they enter a doorway. But in China, where the outbreak began and more than 3,000 people died, the cases are slowing. Some factories are actually reopening, providing workers with masks
Because he
and
can't
jugs of
be
Wait at the last minute.
slow on that. Yeah, he can't do that. He should start getting them on like now.
That's what I told him.
Yeah, I knew you told him, but he's just got to do it.
Or Bernie Sanders if he becomes the nominee. Elizabeth Warren's reassessing her chances after a poor showing on Super Tuesday. Chief Justice John Roberts says top Senate Democrat Chuck Schumer's comments about 2 Trump-nominated Supreme Court justices are dangerous. Schumer said the justices would pay the price if they decided an abortion case the wrong way. This is AP News. No personal cups allowed at Starbucks right now to keep out the coronavirus.
In an open letter on its website posted Wednesday, Starbucks says it's temporarily suspending the use of those reusable cups people bring in with them to help prevent the spread of the coronavirus. However, the coffee retailer says it will still honor the 10-cent discount for those who have their own. They just can't get it filled and will have to accept a single-use paper or plastic cup. Starbucks also says it's increasing cleaning in its shops and has converted its shareholders meeting in hometown Seattle to a virtual event. I'm Julie Walker.
Boston is marking the 250th anniversary of a massacre that helped spark the Revolutionary War. The massacre began when a mob attacked a British soldier who was among the troops occupying the city. to enforce new tax laws.
Did you
on
know that
American colonies.
all those tens of millions of
5
votes that
victims
had
were
still not
killed.
been counted in California?
I'm Rita Foley.
No.
Remember I read that in the headline?
Oh, yeah.
10 million have been cast, 5.3 million have been counted, 4.7 million have not been counted.
Worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
Oh yeah, it's important. Important to note.
WCPT820 Chicago Traffic Update.
Okay.
Metro reports delays on the Union Pacific North line after there was a disabled freight train off Keegan Station. You got 2 minute delay at the Cicero to the junction.
Do you have another run sheet over there?
Robert Half is the better way to hire short-term and full-time talent.
Not the addendum, the
Half's
actual run
personalized
sheet.
service and
Okay,
advanced
perfect.
matching
Thanks so
technology
much.
find you highly skilled professionals for accounting, finance, IT, legal, marketing, and administrative roles. Visit roberthalf.com.
If you're one of the millions of Americans who owes back taxes, if you get nervous when the mail comes because you might get a letter from the IRS, then you've heard. Their enforcement agents are cracking down this year and can garnish your paycheck, levy your bank
And we're up at
account, even your
are we up at
home or
06
business
or
could be at risk
55.
over unpaid taxes. It's all true, but it's also
at
true
55?
there's a way out.
What time?
55 seconds.
5:55. Oh, 5:55. Okay.
The award-winning experts at Optima Tax Relief will fight to get you the best deal possible, protecting your paycheck and your assets from IRS collections. But don't delay, because the IRS is tacking on interest and hefty penalties every single day. So don't wait until it's too late. Call Optima now for a free consultation.
Call 800
Because I want to get more of the calls in.
800-348-0269.
See what I mean? Oh, we need to let Maria go.
800-348-0269.
Unless she's trying to stay.
Optima Tax Relief.
Okay.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
30 years is a long time. I'm 30 and just had my first child. 30 years is also the difference in life expectancy between Inglewood, where I live, and the Mag Mile, because a broken Medicaid funding system favors some communities over others. Please call your state lawmakers and tell them to pass the Fair Funding for Community Hospitals bill, so all of us can get the care we need. I don't want my life cut short. I want to watch my kid grow up.
A message from SEIU Healthcare Illinois.
If you or a loved one is living with leukemia, lymphoma, multiple myeloma, or MDS, don't miss the annual town hall meeting for blood cancer patients on Sunday, January 26th, from 1 to 4 p.m. at the Holiday Inn in Skokie. Your questions will be answered all afternoon by a panel of medical experts. The free town hall meeting is presented by the Leukemia Research Foundation and includes refreshments and free parking. For more information and to register, visit allbloodcancers.org or call 847-424-0600.
Remember when you get to work to hop over to WCPT820.com or the TuneIn Radio app and stream The Stephanie Miller Show, weekdays 8 to 11 a.m. on Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, streaming live on Talk1017FM.com out of Milwaukee, and streaming live on Talk927FM.com out of Madison, Wisconsin. Those are our new home stations, along with WCPT 820 here in Chicago. Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278, or WCPT. You can also send us a text over there. Thank you, GWC Injury Lawyers. And we are streaming live on the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook. Please stream us live and like and share. And you can like and subscribe on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube page. Like and subscribe over there, please, please, please. And of course, I'm on Twitter at SantitaJ. And I'm on Instagram. I need to get more active on Instagram. Santita Jackson IG. Everybody, let's talk about this shooting, the Molson Coors shooting up in Milwaukee. It's just another case of workplace violence, but you've got to dig down because something else happened here. It was a hostile work environment, it appears. A hostile work environment that pushed a worker over the edge. You know, you cannot treat anybody any kind of way and think that people don't feel. I'm not making excuses, but I'm trying to give you some reasoning behind the actions that people, that they're pressed into. No, now the police have said that this was not racially motivated, and yet this gentleman who walked in and killed 5 co-workers and then himself there was a noose in his locker. And then when the media started talking to journalists, started speaking to other people who worked at Molson Coors, they said, oh, this is a hostile environment for those of us who are black, for those of us who are Muslim, for those of us who are not white. Wow. I'm going to talk about that in just a few minutes. Right now, so call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT, and keep those calls coming in because you all want to also talk about the election 2020 race. Some of you want to make the ticket already. You know what? We're not done with the primary season, everybody. Okay? Don't act like the Republicans where they just eliminated the primaries, which is terrible. I think that as Americans, we just ought to object to this. This is not the way the Republic is going to survive, everybody. This is not the way this is going to work. Lady B, let's get some of these headlines out of the way so we can welcome this fantastic panel and talk about this tragedy up in Milwaukee that we've seen happen, quite frankly, all over the country. We've seen it happen all over the country. Well, Warren and Sanders' allies are scrambling to help her to find an exit ramp after Tuesday. She finished a disappointing third in her home state, Elizabeth Warren did, Senator Warren, and yet she's still a force in Democratic politics and in this race. What will she do? Will she withdraw from the race? Will she suspend her campaign? Will she support Sanders, or will she support Biden? There's some talk about that. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. They say that she and Sanders don't have the warmest of relationships, but philosophically, she's more in sync with him. What do you think is going to happen, everybody? And more women activists are saying, we want a woman on the ticket, period. Should it be Elizabeth Warren? Should it be Kamala Harris? Should it be Stacey Abrams? What do you think? Should it be Hillary Clinton? Yes, I did put that out there. We'll have to see how this goes because you know what, I expect anything in 2020. And she has been urged to help form a progressive front with Senator Sanders because that is what the moderates have done, which is what has propelled, at least temporarily, Vice President Biden into first place in the popular vote. And Bernie Sanders is not that far behind in the delegate count or in the popular vote. So I think we just need to let this play itself out, everybody. And so, everybody, did you know that the U.S. health system is showing that it's not ready for the coronavirus pandemic? Indeed, already in California, Gavin Newsom, the governor, has declared a state of emergency after the first coronavirus death. The death toll in the United States for this virus has climbed to 11 as of yesterday. But you know, in California, this is their problem is not helped by the homelessness, the crisis of homelessness, and unaffordable housing. You can make a lot of money in California and still not be able to afford a decent place to live if you can get a place at all. And the World Health Organization says that this virus is more deadly than thought. 3.4% death rate globally. That's quite high, everybody. And what if you have disabled children? There's a Washington Post article that I've posted in my Twitter feed and on my Facebook page that talks about planning for this virus being more difficult for people who have disabled children. Think about the medicines, or think about you if you have asthma, if you have some chronic condition. What if we start running out of medicines? They're saying that we're turning into a nation of preppers because people are afraid that we will run out of different supplies, foods, and things like that. Think about that. We have to be prepared. We have to be prepared for what could be coming. What could Michael Bloomberg's $500 million that he spent on this campaign, this ill-fated presidential campaign, he just left yesterday, what could it have bought? It could have cleared medical debt for millions of Americans. It could have helped to clean up Flint, Michigan, according to this Guardian article. It could have helped to house the homeless in New York City. That's right. There's 60 to 80,000 people living unhoused in New York City alone, where he was mayor. According to the Guardian, Bloomberg certainly, they write, would have had to lay out a bit more than the $500 million to give them all homes in one of the most expensive cities in the country. But, at $226,000 a pop, he could have housed over 2,200 people. I'm not telling you what you should do with your money, but we're still trying to figure out why he ran in the first place. In every Super Tuesday state with exit polls, the majority of Democratic voters supported eliminating private health insurance. Did you know that? Ah, that's right. It seems that a universal single-payer system is far more popular than many of us know. Did you know that California is not decided yet, Lady B, because there are 10 million votes cast in that state, the most populous state in the nation, but only 5.3 million of those votes have been counted. The provisional ballots have not been counted. The absentee ballots have not been counted. So maybe Biden won, or maybe Bernie won by a larger margin than we know. What do you think? I think we need not count our chickens before they hatch. How about that? Okay, that's right. There is no, I mean, you have a front runner for the moment, but you don't have a nominee yet. All right, everybody, the Milwaukee Admirals won in overtime over the Texans 3-2. The Milwaukee Bucks, they were triumphant over the Pacers 119-100. The Chicago Bulls, however, the Timberwolves got the better of us 115-108. You're not surprised, are you, Lady B?
No.
She's not. Okay, that's all right. It's all right. The Dow is surging back more than 1,000 points. Many people are worried about what's going to happen with this coronavirus, and our stock markets all around the world are reacting to this coronavirus and the slowing down of manufacturing. Workers who are having to stay home. You know, these factory workers cannot go into the workplace, Lady B. Okay, it's not just executives, it's everybody. Okay, S&P closed up 126 points yesterday. NASDAQ stayed steady. Chicago, we're expecting a high of 50 degrees. In Milwaukee, 45 degrees and clear. It's going to be a beautiful day in Milwaukee. In Madison, 43 degrees, a high, and it will be cloudy. All right, everybody, what happened in Milwaukee? What happened there? A gentleman walked into his workplace, and he killed 5 co-workers, and then he killed himself. But is it as simple as that? Call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763 WCPT. This gentleman walked into his workplace and killed all of these people, changed everybody's lives. He was a father, a grandfather. Why would he do this? Well, the police have said there is no racial motive. He's African American, Anthony Farrell. But a noose was found at his locker in 2015, according to a Molson Coors spokesman. And as journalists have gone around the Molson Coors campus, they have heard stories from black people, from people who are Muslim. They said, no, there is a hostile work environment here. So while the police are saying racism is not a factor, is that true? And what happens in these environments, these work environments that are hostile? Whether it's race or something else, what happens? Everybody, let's talk about it. What would you do if you found a noose in your locker or at your desk? How would you react? What would you do? What are you supposed to do? What if your supervisor says, okay, we're not supposed to tolerate behavior like that, and then nothing else happens? Because that's what happened to this gentleman. So I want to bring on to you one of the great activists in Milwaukee, someone who I've known for a while, who said, you know what, I know about this story, and I've dug down and I've been doing work on it because we're trying to bring the community together. We're trying to find out what happened, and we're trying to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Keith Bailey, brilliant young activist, and someone who's really always been trying to build a better Milwaukee. How are you, Keith Bailey?
Good morning, Santita. I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful hearing your voice today. Tell me, what was this? What happened? This is such a tragic story.
So last week, again, Milwaukee makes the national news again when a 51-year-old black man that's an experienced journeyman electrician, a very skilled craftsman that had spent 20 years working at Molson Coors, or what we commonly know as Miller. We just work at Miller Brewing Company. Went into the workplace, or re-entered the workplace, and killed 5 of his known employees or workers that worked around him after turning the gun on himself. Here in Milwaukee, currently, the community is waiting for the truth because, we don't have the truth yet. We know what we experience in the work environments because this is such a racially charged environment we sometimes work and operate in as professionals. We know what we go through day to day, but we're still waiting for the truth from Miller, from the leadership that's here, or from someone to give us exactly what happened, because there's more to this story, as you previously stated, than what we're getting. There was a noose found in his wall locker area, and it's been nobody at Miller's been found responsible for putting it there, and there's been no transparency around the noose. But what we do know is the police and the mayor, they're kind of tossing the story back and forth. The community's waiting for the truth still. And we also know that the chief is currently, after yesterday's report, is calling this a mental issue. He also said, hey, this is what he quoted. He said, yes, I'm going to go out on a limb on this one and say that I believe it's more of a mental health issue as we develop that and get more facts based on the information we're getting. And that's where this is leading us, said Morales. He said he's going to go out on a limb. This is after the noose was found, after there's the community's reporting of racial tension there at Miller, and after the community still is waiting for the truth to be revealed about the conditions there in this environment that Anthony Terrell worked in.
Everybody, what do you think about this? I mean, what do we do, Keith, when we are working in these environments that are hostile, but he had taken this, this was, and harassment like this had been discussed with a now retired supervisor, and the supervisor just said, this should not happen here, and then nothing else was done. And then, of course, the cameras are not working when the noose is placed, so you don't know who placed the noose. But you have had incidents like this happen over and over again at this facility, and nothing's been done. And when they went, as the journalists have approached the black workers, they're like, oh no, this happens all the time. And even Mr. Farrell, according to my reading of these reports, when one of his colleagues, a black colleague, said, I've been get assigned to this particular area, he said, oh, they're haters over there. Wow.
See, that brings up a clear point. Milwaukee is a Rust Belt town. It's a working town. Factories go back to the 40s and 50s. Milwaukee helped build America. Milwaukee has got great jobs, great opportunity. But sometimes in our work environment, all we do is come to work to just work. I just want to work and go home and take care of my family. Now, Anthony Farrell has been, it seems, a victim also. A victim of racism, a victim of differences, a victim of opinions that have led him to make a very terrible decision. It's terrible to even go into a work environment and re-enter like Miller did the other day and know that you had coworkers and friends that were killed in the same environment that you had to work and persist in. Now, Miller's going to go on. They're going to keep brewing and keep distributing beer. They're going to do their work. However, what happens to the citizens of Milwaukee when we don't know day to day what our work environment is going to be like? And we don't know day to day how to exist in an environment that is so toxic and no one's doing anything about it. I just came to work. That's all Terrell was saying. I just came here to be a journeyman, qualified, skilled electrician in Miller.
Attorney Peter Fox, noted attorney. You're here and you're in Chicago. You're in Milwaukee, but this is a national problem. I mean, people deal with have to work in these hostile environments every day, and oftentimes, when you deal with when it's racial, we're told that we're playing the race card. And this is not what happened to this man. And now they want to say that he had a mental problem. I mean, really? Attorney Fox.
Good morning, Santita.
Good morning.
This is an issue that has so many layers to it. And it's very difficult to get your arms around it and your head around it and be able to say this is the narrative that is the truth. As Keith was saying earlier, we're waiting for that truth, but at the same time, we've got to understand, what can we do? What can we do going forward? Because here we have 6 families that are suffering the worst kind of tragedy you can imagine. 6 people died at work. You don't expect to go into work and die. Go anywhere and be the victim of violence like this, whether it's the workplace, the school, anywhere in the community. But from the perspective where I'm coming from and what message we want to get out to people in the workplace who are suffering the kind of hostilities that we're reading about now in the Journal Sentinel and various other publications, is that there are options for legal recourse. It's not always just about reporting it to a supervisor and hoping that an employer is going to solve the problem, because, as many people and many of your listeners, I'm sure, know, workplaces oftentimes are ill-equipped to handle these kinds of complicated personal issues that infect just about every workplace, especially large workplaces like Miller Coors. They're not really the exception here. It's commonplace, and if we're not getting satisfactory resolutions through whatever internal mechanisms an employer allows, there are external mechanisms that people need to be aware of, because from the Civil Rights Act, it was set up that people who are suffering through workplace harassment that's motivated by race or age or another prohibited factor can go outside their organization and make complaints to the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission, or here in Wisconsin, we have the state administrative agency, which is the Equal Rights Division. And these are the agencies that have been tasked with investigating and enforcing the anti-discrimination laws.
So you're saying that he actually had recourse. I mean, that federal agencies, there are agencies in place, there are laws in place to protect a worker from being treated this way.
Well, yeah, he had the opportunity for recourse. If the narrative that we're reading now is accurate, and that over the last several years, Mr. Farrell had been the victim of racial hostility, which indeed finding a noose in his locker would be. Yes, that would be something that the EEOC or the Equal Rights Division would be investigating if he brought a complaint. Now, I don't know if he did. I did see some coverage on that issue where some reporters had tried to find out whether or not there had been an ongoing EEOC or Equal Rights Division investigation, and I think the report indicated it was inconclusive. But yeah, those are the agencies that employees can go to with those kinds of concerns.
Everybody, what do you think? What do you think about this? Let me bring on, I have a couple of psychologists with me today, and I'm so excited because, of course, our in-house psychologist is Dr. Brenda Wade out of California, and we're so happy to have her with us. And I'm going to have her comment on the other side of the break. But we have a new member of the Santita Jackson family here, Dr. Jonathan Cantor from the University of Washington, the Center for the Science of Social Connection. What are we looking at here? I only have a couple of minutes before we go to break. But Dr. Cantor, what is this? I mean, how is it that people feel comfortable making somebody else feel so uncomfortable?
Hey, Santita. Nice to have me on the show. I'm concerned this morning. I'm concerned about the state of Milwaukee. As we all know, what happens in Milwaukee happens in the rest of the country. And even though I'm here in Seattle now, I spent a decade living in Milwaukee, working with Keith and others, and my heart goes out to my friends and the people in Milwaukee right now. So with respect to your question, as a psychologist, I can say that this kind of toxic workplace environment, this kind of continuous racial harassment, which from the reports that are surfacing in the newspapers, went on for years and years. It wasn't just a noose in his locker. It was a noose in his locker without knowing who put it there, right? That's a potentially a death threat. I mean, he doesn't know who put it there. He may or may not have complained. He got nothing back from the complaint. He got no support from the management. The N-word is being scrawled on bathroom walls. There are pictures and references to monkeys and other things like that in public spaces. This was a horribly racist, toxic work environment that management was doing nothing about. And we know, as a psychologist, we know the effects of these kinds of environments on everybody, on average people. It hurts people in all sorts of ways. The stress, your cortisol, depression, anxiety, anger, confusion. You feel gaslit. You don't understand what's going on. The news reports are saying maybe this guy was mentally ill, maybe he was crazy. Well, I can tell you just from what I've read so far, anybody would go crazy in this environment. And I'm not crazy. I'm just saying it makes a psychologist for this kind of environment to produce all sorts of craziness and confusion in response.
Dr. Cantor, I want to hear more from you and from Dr. Wade on the other side, because people are not crazy. You can be driven crazy. You can be driven to crazy land when people treat you this unkindly and they expect nothing will happen. The bow breaks, everybody. More in just a minute.
Did you know you can listen to WCPT?
I'm going to go to Dr. Wade, and then I'm going to go to Maggie from Milwaukee and Brad from Elk Grove. Okay,
This
that's
is
great.
Justice Nathaniel Roosevelt House, and I'm running for Justice of the Illinois Supreme Court.
Great, that's great.
I am
That's great.
seeking this position because I believe the most important job of the Supreme Court is to protect the civil rights of every individual, regardless of their background. We need justices on the Supreme Court who truly believe in liberty and justice for all. I've practiced law for 43 years.
I'm going to give this to you early. Sorry about the delay. But this is my schedule. That's all. Just so you can have a hold of it.
Okay, you know what? You should send it to me by email.
Email?
Okay?
All right, yes, no problem. Do you still want to keep a hard copy of this case? Or?
Yeah. Okay, so we'll talk about this afterwards. Okay?
Okay. Every person who comes before the court is treated fairly. Then I ask you to remember these 5 little words. House is in the house. Punch 168. House is in the house.
This is paid by the committee to elect.
Here. The more I read about this case, everybody, the more disturbed I was by it. I mean, because not only was the harassment of Mr. Farrell sustained, his other colleagues have felt the same way. It's horrible. Horrible. And people feel that they can treat you any kind of way and you won't retaliate. I don't believe that you should.
Well, do you think management in this society is very poor?
The management didn't
It's
do
just
anything.
racism.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying racism, but the management didn't do anything.
No. When they're racist, that is what happens. When they don't feel that they need to do anything. This was taken to a supervisor, and he said perfunctorily, then that should not happen here. And nothing was done.
Right.
If you don't do anything, do you understand that? No, because really, you really need to understand that, because this is the world you're going into. Okay? So don't think that just because this is the way it's supposed to go, it goes that way. That's why you have to be part of organizations. That's why you need advocates.
I've advocated for the most vulnerable in our
Yeah, that's why I was trying to say management, I'm saying management
you keep looking for it to go just like this. It doesn't do that. That's why we have our Attorney Fox on. This is part of the Civil Rights Act. This becomes a legal issue because there was management there. There's management all over that corporate structure. They did nothing.
House or 2 flat you'd like to sell quickly?
You need to understand that's how it really works. Which is why when you look at different ethnic groups, they have groups that advocate for them. We have to respect the groups that advocate for black people. Because unlike everybody else, you are the readily identifiable other. I mean, no, it's you need to understand what you're walking into, which is why I try to share some things with you as you have this internship. There's some things you need to understand,
which I'm grateful, and I am learning a lot.
Yeah, because you got a lot of catch up. You got a lot, I mean, because it's tough out here. It's especially tough now because you have a workforce where everybody's struggling. White, black, brown, yellow, and red. I mean, I pray for the day. I don't know if it'll happen in my lifetime. When You want white people to understand. They're under the boot too. You know that this system was designed for the 1% and for everybody else to work for them. That's real.
Again, this is Kim Fox.
Oh, that's where it was designed. You know, white men without property couldn't vote when this republic was founded. They had to win their right to vote too. You didn't know that?
No, I never knew that.
Oh my gosh, you didn't know? That's part of the founding of the country. White men, only propertied white men had the right to vote.
I never knew that.
Oh my Lord.
Thank you for that.
Wow. Hey everybody. Hey everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, streaming live on Talk1017.com. Of course, I'm on Talk 1017 in Milwaukee and streaming live on Talk 927 in Madison. Talk 927 FM, Talk927FM.com, and then Talk 1017FM.com in Madison and Milwaukee in Milwaukee and Madison, and Chicago, WCPT820.com. And we are streaming live all over, and we want you to join us on Facebook on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Like and share, and the Santita Jackson Show YouTube page. Like and subscribe as we talk about what happened in Milwaukee. It made national news that the Molson Coors, the Miller factory, there was a gentleman who'd been crying out for help, Keith Bailey, and Dr. Cantor, as you made it so plain when you said, wait a minute, can you imagine going to work every day and having to deal with this? It would make you'd snap at some point, Dr. Cantor. At some point, the bow breaks, the cradle falls, down comes the baby, cradle and all. That's what I see. And and to hear the police say, well, there was no racial animus, this was not racially motivated, he was just mentally ill. Are you kidding me? Dr. Cantor.
When the police say racism was not a factor, that doesn't mean racism was not a factor. We know we have a long history of not being able to trust what comes from the police until all of the facts are laid out. And as Attorney Fox knows, when the police say racism wasn't a factor, they're using some really strict criteria to determine exactly what was going on in the moment of the shooting. They're not talking about the larger culture and context of this organization. That's not what the police does. So you can't simply say racism wasn't a factor. And furthermore, if the police are calling this a mental health issue, if they're saying this is more of a mental health issue, well, how many times do we have to go through this? How many times do we have to be talking about the fact that mental illness and mental health issues don't cause this kind of violence except in extremely, extremely rare cases? And Anthony Farrell was not one of those rare cases. Mental health issues will not explain what brought Anthony Farrell to this act on this day. Saying it was because of a mental illness would be saying, like, if Anthony Farrell had cancer, well, then the cancer caused him to pull the trigger. It just doesn't make sense as an explanation. And the last thing I'll say is, even if Anthony Farrell was struggling with mental health issues, and we don't know if he was or not, I certainly don't know if he was or not, but even if he was struggling with mental health issues, this kind of toxic work environment, this kind of ongoing racial harassment, is exactly the kind of thing that we know from dozens and dozens of scientific studies can produce these mental health issues. So it's all tied up in a big mess in this case.
Absolutely. Dr. Brenda Wade, as we go to these callers, help me. We're told that we're playing the race card, if we present this to supervisors. What?
I couldn't agree more with my colleague and my co-person, Dr. Cantor. I appreciate everything you said. And ironically, Santita, you have two psychologists from the University of Washington this morning, also my alma mater. And it's very important to understand, as Dr. Cantor said, that anyone who's exposed to a toxic work environment over time, something as cruel and dramatic and threatening as having a noose put in your locker, that is a symbol of a death threat. And for an African American, we all know what a noose means. It's a symbol of lynching. And it's absolutely the scourge. We know that over 4,000 African Americans were murdered by lynching in this country right this very moment. my sister's visiting the lynching museum, and it's horrifying. So this scepter lives in our subconscious because we've been exposed for generations to this kind of cruelty. And I believe that there are triggers, the research says there are triggers for this kind of symbol because it strikes fear. It's meant to strike fear. They meant to terrorize him by putting a noose in his locker. And terror is a thing that depletes the brain, as Dr. Cantor said. Neurotransmitters are no longer there to regulate the brain, and that means that person is highly vulnerable. Highly vulnerable. And it sounds as if this could have been an absolutely chronic situation that over time depleted this gentleman, would have depleted anybody. And at the end of the day, he took the law into his own hands because there was no protection. And of course, he didn't know he could go to outside federal agencies and report. He didn't know he could get support. He didn't know that there might be a remedy, but it wasn't going to come clearly from the company he's working for.
And that's an awful thing. Reggie from Milwaukee. How you doing, Reggie?
I'm good, Santita. Great to be on the show.
Great hearing your voice. What's on your mind?
Well, you know, one of the things that bothers me about how this has been handled by the police department in particular is that, you know, our police chief has waited quite a while to make a statement. You know, they released a press statement, as well as him giving an interview to one of the local radio shows just recently. And all along, he has said, you know, we're not going to speculate about the motive. We're not going to speculate about what happened, whether race was involved in this or not. But the day after the shooting, he said that race was not involved. Without having any clear investigation having been completed at that time. And now for him to go on a radio station and speculate himself that this is related to mental health is really causing a lot of problems for the black community. There are a lot of people that are very, very upset about how the police have handled this in terms of them now trying to turn this into a mental health issue and ignoring the fact that there is clearly some racism that Moors, you know, Colson Moors, not only the issue with, you know, the lynching depiction with the noose there, which we all are quite familiar with here in Milwaukee as a result of being a home to America's Black Holocaust Museum, which was founded by a lynching victim, Mr. James Cameron. And so when we look at how the police are handling this is pretty much par for the course for the Milwaukee Police Department in terms of its relationship with the African American community. There's a great deal of distrust with the Milwaukee Police Department, has been for a number of years. You know, the ACLU filed a complaint against the Milwaukee Police Department for racially based stop and frisk practices. And so it's not really a big surprise to us that the police chief is coming out and making these statements. And obviously the company will never come out and say that there was a hostile work environment there because it doesn't serve any purpose for them to admit that there was, even though they did come out and make a statement about the noose, which was already out there before they made the statement. I mean, I heard this the day after the shooting about the noose. So, you know, I'm very disturbed, and I think that from the African American people I've spoken to in the community that it's not being handled very well. And now that the chief has speculated about mental health, which I don't know how he could speculate that on a radio show, and then issue a statement telling people not to make any speculation, it is absolutely just ridiculous, in my opinion.
Well, you know, Reggie, it's very interesting. I've got Vicky on my Facebook feed who said that Molson Coors has acknowledged racial issues at the plant, so the police have already been discredited. That's true, but they're holding the line on that. And oftentimes we hear Keith Bailey and Dr. Cantor and Dr. Wade and Attorney Fox that people are crazy, you know, and they're playing the race card. And, you know, okay, the noose pops up at his locker, but the cameras don't work. Now, they can catch you doing everything else, but they can't catch someone putting a noose. I mean, what is this? This is crazy. It's not crazy, it's cruel. It's just cruel. And there are laws against this. What is going on? Thank you so much for calling me, Reggie. Blessings to you. And I'm so glad that you joined the Santita Jackson Show. Keith, what is this? Oh, no, thank you. The race card, is that what's being played here?
Well, let's talk about symbolism and freeze for a minute and a limb and let's talk about a news, and let's talk about what the police stated, the police chief in the city of Milwaukee stated on yesterday. He says this, okay? The news found in 2015, but the only words he could come up with, symbolism, is yes, I'm going to go out on a limb on this one. I'm going to guess on this one, and I'm going to say I believe, and this is after he said we're not going to look into it, it's going to take 2 weeks to investigate, this is preliminary. He said, I believe it's more just the same old thing, mental health issues. Santita, I believe that in the city of Milwaukee, this racism and what we experience in our work environments, to include people that are on their way to work today, I don't care if it's a race issue, if someone's handicapped, if their lifestyle is not something someone doesn't agree with. The main issue is this can't go away just because the chief wants it to go away. He wants to keep saying mental issues. There was more involved with the electrician, with Anthony, than is being presented to us, and we need to know the truth.
Attorney Fox, is there any legal recourse now? I mean, what happens? What happens to? I mean, does Miller Coors have any culpability in this? I mean, if it is found what we know that there was racial harassment on the job, is there anything that Mr. Farrell's family, do they have any recourse? I mean, and the people who were killed, is there anything? I mean, what else would happen?
Well, those are so many issues right there. That's a very simple question, Santita. I mean, you'd like to think that there is. First of all, you'd like to think that there's some recourse for the families who have lost their loved ones here. I mean, this is a tragedy that, again, has affected 6 people, 6 people's families and their friends and everyone extended throughout the entire Milwaukee community. Sadly, the recourse for Mr. Farrell for discrimination in the workplace and this kind of harassment was, it had to have been brought. It had to have been brought and formalized in some sort of complaint to an outside agency in order for there to go through the process. I think, sadly, that it may be too late at this point. I would like to touch on something that Dr. Cantor brought up, because I think there's a really fantastic point that he made. Even if there was some mental health issues here, and I'm gonna butcher your quote, Dr. Cantor, but he said even if there was mental health issues, those issues, if this is what he was experiencing at Miller Coors, those issues probably started there. And anyone who would have gone through that kind of hostility, mental health issues are the likely result of that. And that's why, for me, in what I can bring to this panel and this discussion is I want to urge people who are going through this, that there are outlets to bring those concerns before they become so terrible that you're not getting the kind of help that we all think we deserve from our workplace and from the people who we're working for, to be vigilant about these kinds of harassment situations and hostility that are causing mental health problems. We need to reach out before it gets too deep for it to be cured. Put it in the hands of an administrative agency who actually has some enforcement power, that isn't motivated by the bottom line of the workplace and the production at work. They're motivated by what they're tasked to do, which is to investigate and hopefully resolve workplace discrimination, workplace harassment, workplace retaliation. I don't know that I can properly address that second part of your question, Santita, which is whether or not the victims' families have recourse against Miller, because I don't know what kind of culpability they may have. We don't know the narrative. We don't know what kind of security measures were in place, what kind of notice they may have had that this was a problem that could occur. And so until all those things are known, I'm sure people are looking into that, but we really wouldn't know that until then.
No, let me go to Carrie from Champaign. Carrie, what's on your mind?
When I heard this, I just turned on the radio and I heard you guys talking about telling this story, it reminded me of what happened with me. And I live down here in central Illinois. Well, what happened with me, it was workplace harassment, racism, and what they would do is that they would scrawl species with the N-word in the bathroom stall. So, and when I worked there at the place for 20 years. I wound up working there for 20 years. Well, anyway, I worked there. They had at one time the probationary period was 30 days. So I worked out my overtime, and it wound up coming out to 31 days. And in that 31 days, I wound up getting fired because they wanted to fire me because they were trying to intimidate me. And so as I got back onto the job, they laid me off for about 6 months. And then when they brought me back, it was this one particular supervisor would always try to harass me. And I would go to the union and tell them and complain about it. And I'm sure this man probably took these same steps, but no one would listen. So we had a big confrontation, this one supervisor, in which it really blew up. I'm not going to explain it. I don't want to go into all the details because, like I said, this was 20 years ago. But anyway, it wound up going to HR. And then at that time, HR was on site. Not today, they're not. Well, I work at a different place. Well, anyway, so when it went to HR, it was me and a group of other guys, several guys from the union, who wanted to press this issue because they believed it. And when I went to the one guy in HR, and this is what it takes. This one man named Bill Small, his son plays golf for the University of Illinois. When Bill Small found out about it, and he confronted the supervisor and told him, and we explained what was going on, he believed me.
Was Bill Small white? You know, that's what, and I think that's interesting because even though you said that this happened 20 years ago, and I just stay right there because I'd like to pitch this to Doctors Cantor and to Doctors Cantor and Wade. Even though this happened 20 years ago, the way you're describing it, it's as if it happened yesterday. No, stay right there. I mean, Doctors Wade and Cantor, this is you. Y'all got this. I can't even say you've got it. I'm like, y'all got it.
I could hear the same thing you could hear in this gentleman's voice. The pressure of unresolved trauma. And when we talk about hostile work environments, when we talk about things like racism, lynching, nooses, these are things that create chronic anxiety over time, and it doesn't just go away. I'm sure that with the gentleman who pulled the trigger, Mr. Farrell, we are looking at chronic anxiety. Now, when we say mental health, all mental health means is that the brain is affected. Mental health means there's an invisible wound to the brain. We can't see it. Dr. Cantor mentioned this earlier. It's the depletion of the good neurotransmitters because the brain is flooded with cortisol. Cortisol's fight or flight, fight or flight. Well, Mr. Farrell, unfortunately, came out fighting. And I can hear from the gentleman who just shared that this deep wound. Now, here in California, we have Dr. Nadine Burke. She's our first ever Surgeon General for the state of California, a woman of African descent. And her contribution to the field of mental health is that she is a person that discovered adverse childhood experiences and the effect on the brains of young children. And her practice was in the black community of San Francisco. And she found that children had higher than one would expect incidences of all kinds of things that we would call mental health. What were those children dealing with, Cynthia? They were dealing with racism, poverty. All of the ills that we know affect people of African descent. Well, what happens when you grow up with those issues, those ACEs, and then you go to the workplace? So we have a repeat scenario that depletes the brain. And I want to just say there's three things that can shift it. If you're facing those issues, number one, get support that is emotional support. Get Somehow get a therapist involved, go to a support group, make sure you talk to your pastor, somebody on your team who can help you. Talk to your family, let them know you're going through something and that you need support. And again, I repeat, I love the advice that all of our legal team are saying, go to an outside agency because your job is usually the last place where you're really going to get help.
Dr. Cantor, you heard him. I mean, it's just the you know, what are you supposed to do? I mean, because look, people are struggling to pay their bills, and this is a job. This was a man who, and mind you, I do not think that he should have gone into the place to kill anybody. I don't even know if he intended to do that day. But that having been said, he had a wife, children, grandchildren. He was trying to pay his bills. He was trying to be a responsible man, and no one was being responsive to him or responsible for him. And now you have him, he's dead, and now 5 other people are dead. And a whole community's been traumatized.
Right. And I think Carrie's story, your calling guest's story, is so important. There's a moment in Carrie's story where he mentioned this character, Bill Small. Mm-hmm. And Carrie, you said, he believed me. He believed me. And that is so important. I'm not saying that's going to take away all of the pain and all the trauma, but that's so important. And we can just speculate and imagine what would have happened if back in 2015, when Anthony Farrell was potentially complaining about the noose in his locker and other things, and what would have happened if back then somebody actually believed him? Somebody gave him some validation, gave him some response that was appropriate to the situation. What could look different now, 5 years later, if he got somebody who believed him, who backed him, who advocated for him?
Well, Dr. Cantor, just stay right there. Hold it, because I thought it was interesting. Because I think that because the person who believed in him, who believed his story, who advocated, was a white man. And I think that is significant as well. Don't you?
Well, I think, of course, what we need is the belief in the validation to come from people in authority, to come from people who can do something to make a difference. And we live in a country where that power is disproportionately put in the hands of white people. Unfortunately, that's not fair. We have these structural problems, but white people have power to make a difference here. That's just the reality we live in. And one more thing I'd like to say is, instead of getting this kind of validation, this kind of belief, when these things happen, what happened in the Miller Brewery is clear as day to anybody who looks at it. This was a horribly toxic, racist environment. And instead of getting belief, instead of getting validation, we're getting this kind of crazy doublespeak from the people in charge. And of course, that goes all the way up to the top. That goes all the way up to the president, who's offering this kind of doublespeak with all sorts of problems. And it's just producing this gaslighting, this craziness across our whole country right now.
Well, you know, there was a documentary years ago, I think before many of us on the phone who were born, The Hate That Hate Produced. This is where we are right now. This is where we are. And I think we have got to be very, very, very careful. We have to be mindful. I've only got a couple minutes left in the segment. Keith Bailey, what do you want people around the country who are listening to us, what do you want them to know?
Please continue to listen and listen for Milwaukee. We got the Democratic Convention coming up, but as you come here, please know that we have systemic problems that have gone on year after year after year. If you're an employee or you're in the city of Milwaukee on your way to work and you got pressure and the pressure continues to persist, either go home, take a sick day, like our attorney Fox said, go speak to somebody outside of work. But just remember, all you want to do is just go to work and pay your bills. I just came to work. I just came to get my job done. There shouldn't be all sorts of other things that are going on in work because they want you to produce good work. But you got to remind yourself that in order to get that, you have to be in the right mental state of mind. Don't do nothing that's off or crazy. Please go speak to somebody at work. Document. We love the people in Milwaukee. We have a great city on the Great Lakes. And again, we just came to work and get some things done so we can feed our families and take care of our families.
Well, I want to thank you. Yes.
last thing.
I've got about 30 seconds. You got it.
All right. With mental health issues, with stress, with anxiety, there are mental health solutions. Everyone needs to find the resources in the community to get support on the ground, whether it's your church, whether it's a mental health clinic. I wish I knew Milwaukee better in terms of mental health issues, but there are mental health solutions. There are hotlines people can call. Don't go through this without support.
Well, you know what? I tell you what. I'm going to bring you, Dr. Wade, and Dr. Cantor. I want to bring you back because we've got so many people who've called in, and so many people are dealing with a hostile work environment. And in this time when you are being pressed with your bills, and when many of us don't see a way out, when we don't see our way clear, we can snap. And I want you to know, don't be ashamed to go to a doctor. Don't be ashamed to go. When you break your arm, you go to the emergency room and get it reset. If your psyche, if your spirit has been broken, go get a reset. Go to the psychologist. Go to a counselor. Go get the help that you need. And you know what? Get a witness. Go get the legal help you need because you deserve it. No one, red, yellow, black, brown, or white, deserves to live this way. Attorney Fox, Keith Bailey, Doctors Cantor and Wade, God bless you. Thank you. See you tomorrow. Wow.
This is Lewis Carter from GWC Injury Lawyer.
That's its
Well,
own
cannabis
show.
is now legal in Illinois, which means you cannot be charged criminally
That's
as
its
long
own
as you're in
show.
compliance with
The hostile
cannabis
work
laws.
environment.
You cannot ingest in public
That's
or in
a
your
show.
vehicle ever.
Yes.
You
That
must
is a
transport
show.
it in a
Yes.
sealed,
That's a
childproof
show.
container that prevents the
A hostile
contents
work
smell
environment. You want to bring
from getting
Carrie
out
up so
and
I
ensure
can
that
say
it is
something
out
to
of your
her?
reach while driving your car. You cannot smoke pot in your condo or apartment building
that's
if your
horrible.
landlord has a no
But
smoking
it is
policy.
enough to make you
You can be fired from your
crazy.
job if your
Carrie
employer
hung
has a
up.
zero
Huh?
tolerance
Carrie hung
alcohol
up.
or drug policy and you
Oh, he
fail a
did?
drug
Okay.
test. You may lose your
'Cause I see
workers'
him here.
compensation case
Yeah,
if you
but
are injured
okay.
on
But
the
it's
job
off
and
the
test
hook, so-
positive.
Well, you know what?
for
I
pot.
tell you what,
And
he
remember,
heard.
due to limitations on testing, that positive test can be given
He
to
heard.
ingesting
He
cannabis
heard
30
the
days
story
prior
and
to
had to
your
call in,
accident.
and it happened 20
You
years
will be
ago.
cited for a DUI if an officer believes you're impaired
That's what's so
and your
awful.
blood or urine tests positive for THC.
Ooh.
So if you want to
Let me
indulge in
call
THC before you
Keith and
ingest,
thank him
read up on your rights at GWC and learn more at gwclaw.com.
for this.
This is AP News. I'm Rita Foley. Facebook says it's temporarily closing a Seattle office after a worker
should've
was
added 30
diagnosed with the
seconds.
coronavirus.
To what?
11 people have
Oh,
died
to
of the
this?
virus in the
In the news
U.S., all but one of them in
You should have
Washington
added 30
State.
seconds or taken
The other in
30. We should
California.
have come
The
out 30
most
seconds
populated
ago.
state in the nation is now in a state of emergency
take it.
because of COVID-19.
Take
We've
it.
had a number
Oh my
of
God.
incidences
Honey, you were
throughout the state
fantastic.
of California.
Governor Gavin Newsom, a Grand Princess cruise ship is being evaluated by the
It's only
CDC
10
and California
seconds. I
health
don't know
authorities
why.
because several people have the
See if it's
virus
30
and one
seconds,
died at a
'cause he can
hospital
dump that
Wednesday.
shit.
Well,
Newsom
you
says
all were
the
great.
ship
Do you
was
mind if I put you on
scheduled to
speaker?
return to San
I have my
Francisco
producer
Wednesday
here.
night.
Hold on a
Requested
second.
to
Hold
be
on.
delayed, the arrival to be delayed.
Texas reported its first
I was
case
gonna-
Wednesday,
we have to
and
talk with
hundreds
him.
of residents
But I
in
have
the New
Keith
York
Bailey
City
on here
suburb
right
of New
now. I wanted you to say hello to him.
A Grand Princess cruise
Okay,
ship is
hold
being
on.
evaluated
She's
by the
moving to
CDC
another
and
show.
California health
Hold on.
authorities because several
Oh,
people.
Lord, this is loud. Well, I'm glad about that, but gee.
Hello, how are you?
Hey, I'm well.
Well, he enjoyed the segment. Well, you know, I like segments. Well, you know what? Thank you. I like segments like that to move.
Yes.
And most people, Dr. Wade, has been on. She's really a regular. She's a regular on the show. But I felt that Dr. Cantor had something really meaningful to offer, and particularly as a white man, but she as a black woman. And I'd like to bring them both back on.
Yes.
And I'd like to talk about a hostile work environment, and I'd like to use Milwaukee and what happened here, because we're going.
We can make this into a series. We can continue to until the smoke. It's real. It's still on fire at Miller. It ain't it ain't like the water been put on the smoke. It's smoking over there. It's still on fire.
Can you
They
find?
got some explaining to do, Santita.
Well, can you find any more of the workers? Anyone who'd be willing to speak to it?
Yes, I can. I can keep working on this.
Perfect.
That would be perfect, because what I'd like to do is have another segment like that. It might even start it in the 6 o'clock hour and let it run for a couple of hours.
Yes.
Because I would like to have Doctors Cantor and Wade speak to speak to the people who call in.
And think about all the people you're helping, Santita. This is what you're about. It's like the movement turns into help, and you're helping so many people that we'll never see. They'll never call a radio station, but they heard this show today. And again, people sometimes need a way out. They ain't looking for a handout. They want to work, Santita. I just want to work my job, get a check, and pay these bills, take care of these ugly jeans I done had. That's all they want to do.
All people, every person who becomes an adult wants to be self-sufficient.
Yeah.
And and see, different people bring different gifts. Attorney Fox let us know that we have legal recourse. He said, wait a minute, the Civil Rights Act has given you the pathway to justice. We don't know that. That's important. Dr. Cantor said, wait. Do you know what he had to live with in this work environment? And can you imagine going to that every day? Because my intern here, you're 22, 23? 22? There's, bless your heart, and this is just because so many of us don't know. You did not know, and we're on Facebook Live, at the moment. But just so that you know what happens here, you didn't know that only white men of property had the right to vote in America when the country was founded. So you have to understand, baked in the cake is a basic unfairness. Okay? But slavery was racialized, so white people began to feel that they had a privilege that they really didn't have. Really.
Correct.
And so you have poor people who are oppressed, and you got oppressed by a low wage. Okay?
Yeah.
The oppression takes on many different forms, but it becomes so aggressive and ugly when you have monkeys drawn.
Exactly.
And the noose. And like they said, this is a death threat because I don't know who did it. So you're looking over your shoulder all the time. You don't know who. I'm not going to say anything. You don't know who it was. So it's something you need to really that's why I keep trying to tell you, you need to understand the work environment that you're walking into. You need to become clear. You need to understand why Black people need organizations that advocate for them. As Jews need organizations that advocate for them because they know that anti-Semitism is real. They know that.
Dr. Tanner's Jewish. He's been an awesome friend of mine. He's a great person.
Absolutely, and he has processed his family's experience, and he has said no one should ever have to deal with this. No one. And I'm just saying, I have Italian friends who've processed their experiences because Italians and Greeks just became white after the Second World War. So they were treated horribly. And you will find, if you go back, you'll find a lot of intermarriage. Well, all, marginalized groups have a lot of intermarriage. And so you'll see Black folks with all kinds of backgrounds. They're part Jewish, they're part Italian, Greek, whatever. Roy Campanella, who was on the baseball team with Jackie Robinson, his father was Italian. They got to the United States and they were at the bottom too. That having been said, I think that this hostile work environment with all of these jobs that people do people are barely holding on to their jobs, and your boss lets you know that you are lucky to have a job right now.
Yes.
So you better shut up. That's right.
Yeah.
You better shut up.
Shut up, put your head down, and get to work. And I don't want to hear nothing
from
you. And if
take
I
it.
Just
take it.
I'll tell you about all the many things and discrepancies I have with your work. The work you are doing, I'll show you all the discrepancies. And the next thing you know, I'll get your behind out of here.
Take it. Take it. That's what's happening to people. So this guy, I'm imagining, was just at the end of his rope. Just because this man, he had too much to lose. He had a wife. His wife is sitting here like, what? But only heaven knows how this backed up on her when he got home. And then if he's trying to be conscientious and not unload on her, this is where we miss Ebony and Jet magazine, because Ebony used to have features on the pressures that Black couples felt. Oh, they used to, when we were children, they used to have that all the time. Of course, it didn't mean anything to me as a little child, because what do I know? That having been said, you don't know how this backed up in his life, in his world. You do know it backed up because eventually the bow broke and the baby will fall down. And the cradle will fall down. Will come baby, cradle and all. That's what happened to him.
And Santana, I get it that you're talking about Anthony, but think about the victims and the families of the victims, and think about the fact that just like he took this home, Anthony took it home, the electrician took it home, those other 5 folks, they took the matter and they took the pressure that they were causing. And that's why we're waiting for the fact that the pressures that they put on Anthony, trust me, Mr. Farrell, I tell you one thing, the pressure they put on him, the families around him talked about that also. It's just that now we're in a position we got to bury these folks and take care of a lot of folks as a result of what was discussed previously.
Well, I tell you what, that's why I like having psychologists in these discussions, because they validated. They validated their feelings. And that's what I try to do. I try to validate people's feelings. So I'm glad that you were satisfied with the segment. I know we had a lot of people there, but you had someone who legally, Attorney Peter Fox, legally gave us recourse, but Doctors Cantor and Wade gave us, this is what happens, and it shouldn't happen to you. So, y'all got that, everybody? Okay, so Keith, say goodbye to the Facebook Live audience. I'm going to say, just stay right there. I love you all. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Thank you. Love you.